God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
Derwin Gray was a leader on the Indianapolis Colts, a hard-hitting defensive star with NFL money, a promising career, and a wife to share it all with. By every measure, he was a success. But inside, Derwin was still a boy without a role model, shaped by his father's absence, and he was striving to prove that he was worth something. He thought building this strong resume was his answer. Then, in the most unexpected way, God met him in the locker room through a teammate wrapped in nothing but a towel. And what followed would change everything.
For me, being an NFL player, I was responsible, I was intentional, I was passionate, I was studied, I was ready to be an NFL player. I was a much better NFL player than I was a man. Outside of the field, I was what I like to call emotionally constipated, suppressed emotions. I wasn't able to communicate with my wife. I wasn't able to communicate my feelings. I was passive. The only thing I was aggressive about was actually playing the game, right? So my journey into manhood took place when I met Christ. So I didn't grow up in church. Football was, in essence, was my God. And so in Texas, that's just what we do. Played at a great high school. I had great coaches. I learned discipline. I learned sacrifice. I learned teamwork. I learned a lot of incredible things about manhood, became a great player, got a football scholarship, ended up meeting my wife my freshman year, and everything's going great for us. Football is a great God until you can't make it happy anymore. My rookie year, I get drafted by the Colts in 93. I wasn't playing much. 94, I'm playing better. 95, I'm a team captain. I'm on top of the world. But it was at that moment when I realized there's got to be more. Despite my NFL status, despite my investment portfolio, I can't love my wife the way she deserves to be loved because I can't love myself. I can't forgive my father who was not involved in my life. I couldn't forgive things that happened to me. I couldn't forgive myself for stuff that I had done. Also, I knew this, the NFL stands for not for long. So what would I do? Who would I be when I didn't play anymore? And those thoughts haunted me. I had an existential crisis at 25. Then the next year I started getting injuries. But I had a teammate with the Colts that for 5 years, he would share Christ with me, and his methodology was a little different. I share the story in my book, Lit Up with Love, but his nickname was the Naked Preacher. His real name was Steve Grant, but dude would literally take a shower hour after practice, dry off, wrap a towel around his waist, and ask my teammates, do you know Jesus? And I asked the veterans on the team, what's up with the half-naked black man walking around naked, right? So, but one day, he asked me a question that changed my life. He said, do you know Jesus? And like most people who don't know the saving work of Jesus, I gave him my resume. Hey, I don't do this. I don't do this. I haven't done this. I haven't done this. So basically, I was judging my goodness by putting other people down, which is sin. And so he just gently said, so our comparison ain't with other people. It's actually with the glory of God, and the glory of God is Jesus. And I said, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, what you do and what I do can never be good enough to reach God. But because God is loving, he becomes good enough for us in Jesus. And Jesus died on the cross for our sins. And he rose again to now live in us and give us purpose and power in his kingdom. So I was a little hard-headed. That took multiple years for that to take root. But August 2nd, 1997, in a small dorm room in Anderson, Indiana, my 5th year in NFL training camp with the Colts, went back to my dorm room after lunch, and I called my wife and I said, I want to be more committed to you, and I want to be committed to Jesus. That's when I was reborn. That's when I was made spiritually alive. That's when I was forgiven of sins. That's when Jesus invaded and occupied my life. That's when Jesus made me his own. And so God brought some incredible mentors into my life. A gentleman by the name of Alan Bacon. He mentored me in the word, but he mentored me in manhood. I saw how he loved his wife. I saw how he parented his kids. I saw how consistent he was at work. And so he was teaching me through our relationship. And neither my wife nor I grew up in church. And so we threw ourselves into the Bible, into the gospel. We started studying marriage. We started studying what does it mean to be a husband and a wife. It's God's love that transforms us, but it transforms the broken pieces of us. The only thing he asks us for is to trust him. That's it. He literally doesn't need our help, but he wants our faith. And when we give him our faith, he gives us his life. And his life begins to permeate our life. And we're transformed. And then how could you not want to give that away to your homies? I don't recommend being a naked preacher, though. You might get arrested at your job. Let's not do that, okay? Typically, when we teach how to share your faith, we use what's called the confrontational method. The confrontational method is like, okay, let's go downtown, let's hand out tracts, let's knock on doors. I'm not against that. We just don't teach that at our church. It's very few people who are effective at that. What we teach is what's called relationship. It is a relationship, and it starts with prayer, care, share. Prayer, care, share. So one of the things that I do is twice a week, I go into a coffee shop. I write books in there. I do my sermons in there. People go, aren't you interrupted a lot? I say, no, those are divine appointments, birth and prayer. I pray for God to bring people to me that need him. And then I begin to hear their story. I begin to build relationship. I begin to care with them, and I begin to share with them. Some conversations have been going on for 2 and 3 years. Some have gone on for 4 months. Some of them, there are people that come to faith immediately. People coming to faith is a process. You can't bring anybody to faith. Only the Holy Spirit does that. 1 Peter chapter 3, 6 and 7 says this. Paul says, I planted, but Apollos watered. But God gave the increase. The one who plants and waters is nothing, but God who gives the increase. So God doesn't call us to make someone come to faith. He does invite us to share those gospel seeds. Matthew was an atheist. He was a personal trainer. And a friend of mine who was sharing her faith with him said, he's asking me some questions about suffering and evil, and I can't answer them. Will you meet with him? So we sat down to meet, and so I said, man, I just want to know your story. I want to hear your heart. He had gone through a lot of suffering, and he said, if God is all loving and all powerful, why is there evil and suffering? And I said, man, listen, I understand that. I get that. But keep this in mind. You don't know what evil and suffering is unless there's a standard of goodness. And that standard of goodness has to come from somewhere. I believe that's Jesus. That's why he entered the world, to show us what the goodness of God is. So every time you say that something's evil, you're actually saying, I'm making a comparison with something that's good, and the author of goodness is God. So anyway, Matthew and I talk, build a relationship. Some time goes by, and he shows up at church. And someone comes to you and says, hey, there's a guy in the lobby, and he's crying. So I go out there, I see it's Matthew, and I'm kind of surprised that he's there because he's an atheist. And he says, my mom has died, and he falls right into my chest. And I embrace him, and I'm praying for him. Several more conversations, asking him to read the New Testament, starting in the Gospel of John, and Matt comes to faith. Well, that was a process of him coming to faith. And so we have to think in terms of the long game. Just because someone doesn't come to faith today doesn't mean those seeds lay dormant. So prayer, care, share. But you pray more when you see how good God is. You care more when you know that the gospel can change people's lives, and you share more because you want them to experience his grace. It's not a program. It's not a formula. It is the overflow of being on fire. So when you think about the sun, right? The sun radiates heat. Well, the more you and I are intimate with Christ, the more we radiate his grace and his love, and we invite people to come near to him as well. There was a time that I was afraid to hold my wife's hand in public and pray because I was afraid of true intimacy. I was afraid of true love because my life experience told me when people get close to you, they can hurt you. It's like, Derwin, your father wasn't there, your mom wasn't there from times, your uncles, there's pain there. And so I was like, I'm going to withhold love so I don't get hurt. But withholding love only makes your heart harder. True love means that true hurt is a possibility. But the risk of loving is worth it. The God of grace lights you up with love, and he says, my love casts out perfect fear. So the first thing you do is you pray. You say, Lord, today I want to see your face. Today I want to experience your grace. Today I want to walk in your power. And today, would you bring people to me who are yet to discover how good you are? And give me the words to say that they would see you. And then when God does, be prepared to be relationship. Ask questions, listen. And then lastly, share your faith. Listen to where people's pain and where their hurt is, and then you can apply the good news of the gospel there.
God used a half-dressed man in a noisy locker room to reach Derwin Gray. Each play on NFL defense was violent for Derwin, urgent and measured. And today, God uses Derwin in a slower pace, in quiet coffee shops, where trust is earned slowly. The setting has changed from chaos to calm. But did you notice that Derwin's mission is the same as the half-naked locker room preacher/teammate? To share Jesus. A special thanks to Andy Yuso, who let us use this interview with Derwin Gray from the Manly with Andy podcast. If you want to hear that full interview, we've got a link for you in the episode description. The Unfolding is a faith podcast. You can learn more at myfaithpodcasts.com.